we can't be talking about performance reviews like it's any other year. We have to be talking about it against the backdrop of the year that was 2020. And so I want to talk about a few different tips for those of you who are on the line tonight to set the stage for the greatest amount of success and really advocate, as Bimpe was saying, for yourself in these performance reviews. Okay, so the first tip I have, following up on Bimpe, is you're going to set the date, but don't wait to set the stage. So the performance review is one day out of the year. However, your negotiation is year long. So what does that mean? It means thinking about lining up your allies, your advocates. I spoke to a woman much earlier in the year who decided this was the year she was going to go up for a promotion. And so she spent the last 6 months thinking about who's going to be in the room, as Bimpe said, or who has influence over this decision, who might catch people's ears, what's the almost like the board of advisors, the board of directors, the group that I need to put together to be able to advocate for me, right? So thinking about, I always talk about negotiation as being like steering a kayak, and you don't want to wait until once a year to start frantically paddling in the direction you want to go. So think about how many people you can line up. And I want to delve into that advocacy a little bit more because Bimpe, I think you'd agree, this is a year where a lot of us are working remotely. And so it's really hard to make yourself visible to the people who are making decisions. And so in a remote environment, it's really important to keep track of your accomplishments, write them down, create a file that you keep year round, and then share those. For example, you're writing in an email to your manager, Bimpe, I wanted to share this terrific client feedback I just received. I'm so glad we were able to deliver on this project. Thanks for your support. So you are keeping people apprised and making your work visible. You have to do it intentionally because it's much harder. We can't walk down the hall to somebody's office and do the doorway lean and say, oh, hey, Bob, by the way, here's what happened. Okay, so first is to advocate and to make your work visible. Second tip would be, a lot of us, this was a really hard year for a lot of people. People got laid off, people got furloughed. If you didn't, chances are you might have been working harder or taking on additional job responsibilities at work this year. So maybe, again, it's due to layoffs, you have coworkers facing difficulties, or maybe you're just a high performer. So get your job description and review your actual work against it if you have a job description. So this is, anything you have from when you were brought in or the last time you were promoted, and create a comparison document so that your manager, whoever is doing these decisions, can see everything you've done for the organization and how you're going above and beyond your job, if that is in fact what's happening. Another thing you could do is to write down everything you do for a week and bring that to your review. What you want is to give people a window into what you are doing and your contributions every day. This is all part of what Bimpe was talking about, self-advocacy and telling your story. Critically important. Okay, number 3 is to make your work outside of your job visible. And here I'm going to use a term called office housework. And I'm scanning here to see how many women or women of color we have in the audience here today, because there is research to show that women, and especially women of color, are more likely to be asked to take on what's known as office housework. And what is that? It's that institution building work that you're not paid to do, right? So if you are serving on a diversity committee that's taking up, hours of your time every week, if you are recruiting top talent of color, if you are mentoring, younger women who know that you give great career advice, all of that is critical institution building work. And there are a lot of strategies around that, right? So there are strategies on, how to tactfully decline that type of work. But if you have taken it on, then again, you want to think about making that visible so that people know what you're doing. So again, keep a list of all the work that you're doing, maybe even do sort of an average week and showing how that breaks out, and then report it regularly to your manager and your allies, right? So let them know, I'm so glad to have represented the company at 5 recruiting events for women of color this month. I spent 20 hours of time total. Here are our results. I'd love to report on this at our next meeting. And here's, if I can, we're talking about performance reviews. And so here I'm talking to the individuals who are working within a system, but I know we have a lot of leaders here in Fishbowl. And so I would love to speak to the leaders here for a second. If you're in a position to reward institution building work, if you are in a position of leadership and you are able to make sure people know that that work is going to be recognized and compensated, that can go a long way toward creating a culture of equity in your organization, right? So, okay, so we have talked about negotiating year round, creating your board of directors, your allies, your advocates, the people who are in the room. We've talked about reviewing your actual work against your job description and making your office housework visible. And then, my final tip is, what happens if your performance review has been canceled or postponed? I've been hearing about this. I spoke last year at the Wall Street Journal Job Summit. We had multiple thousands of people on the line, and we heard there that some companies were canceling performance reviews, either because they wanted to send a signal, no salary increases are available, or they're worrying about stress to employees, which is, it's so interesting. I come from big law. I was an associate at a very large law firm, and there we didn't have performance reviews. Either you were doing great, in which case you got more work than you could possibly handle, or your work dried up, and that was your performance review. But if your performance review is canceled, I would consider advocating for it. Why? Because even if a salary increase is off the table, having a review, a career related meeting, can be really critical to discussing your career progression, to talking about growth opportunities. You want to create a record of what you've accomplished for the company, and you want to telegraph where you are going so that the next time those raises, those promotions are available, you're in line to get it. So if they say, sorry, Sam, there are no performance reviews this year, we don't have any raises or promotions, you can simply respond, I hear that the salary and title changes are off the table. At the same time, a review would greatly benefit us both. It's important for my professional development to hear what's working, and I'm sure we both want to make sure that I'm going to produce even better results next year. So with those parameters, what's the best time for us to sit down? And my last point for you here is, if you can't negotiate for money, there's more that you can negotiate for. Think about your goals and where you'd like to go. There's mentorship, there's training. I've been doing a ton of training at companies, negotiation training, technology training. There's work from home arrangements, there's health benefits, mental health benefits. There's so much more that you can negotiate, even if salary is off the table. So it's always, always worth the ask.